And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Kind of excited as we're about a week away from RSA 2020. And joining me on the call today, I'm very happy to have our Chief Evangelist, Brian Robeson.
Morning, Bob. Thanks for having me here today.
Excellent. So a couple of things first. From the RSA conference, again, starting next week, we will be in the North Hall, booth 5655. Please come on out, stop by. We'd love to meet you there. We're going to have several presentations that will be going on throughout the day. Now, there's a few topics that we're not showing here just yet, kind of be a little bit of a surprise. Brian's going to show and talk a little bit about a few of them. We're going to be running on Tuesday and Wednesday from 10:30 a.m. until 5:30 p.m. We're going to be rotating through several different theater presentations, as well as having demo booths where you can come get a demo of all of the products on our side, as well as on the BlackBerry side of the house. With that being said, again, several of them we'll be running through, and we definitely will be talking about Persona both for endpoints and for mobile, which will be part of the big announcements we'll talk a little bit about today. And come join us for dinner Tuesday, February 25th. Be our guest and join us with David DeWalt, who is the founder and CEO of Night Dragon Security, former CEO of McAfee and FireEye, as well as several other cybersecurity companies. Mr. DeWalt is also the advisor to the current president, as well as the former president. So highly intelligent. I've done several webcasts with him, and anytime I get a chance to hear him talk, I always walk away with something. At the end, we'll be sharing links for you to register. Again, the dinner will be Tuesday, February 25th from 6 p.m. till 9 p.m. at the Samovar Lounge, which is in the Yerba Buena Gardens as you're walking in the backside of the Moscone Center. So we'll be right up there on the top. You'll see the signs. On Wednesday, we have breakout sessions with our Vice President of Research and Intelligence and our Vice President of Research and Operations, Josh Lemos and Eric Malam. Again, that will be in the Moscone South on Wednesday, February 26th from 9:20 a.m. to 10:10. And then later that evening, if you join us back in the Tea Lounge, we will be doing a networking wine and cheese. We do have that Tea Lounge all day starting on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I personally will be in and out on Wednesday and Thursday there. We'd love to have you stop in and meet us. Any questions? We'll have people from the product team. We'll have our executive leadership team. So we'd love to have you stop in and meet you face to face. So again, that is at the Samovar Tea Lounge in the Yerba Buena Gardens, and that'll be Wednesday, February 26th from 6 to 10. A major theme of what we're going to be talking about is around zero trust and some of our solutions that help you along that journey of arriving to a zero trust model. So with that being said, I'd like to bring on Brian.
Great. Thanks, Bob. And I really appreciate being here today with everybody. This is probably for the first time I believe I've been in RSA about 22 years now. I think like 98 was one of my very first RSAs, or 99. So I've been going a lot of years. For those of you who might remember, Stuart McClure and I did one of the keynote sessions last year where we showed how easy it was to actually bypass modern next generation security solutions with some simple hacking exposed methods. But this year I'm actually, I don't know if I would call it avoiding RSA, but I am booked elsewhere. In fact, I'll be in Belgium next week doing a couple of partner and distribution events, as well as keynoting a conference or NATO. So that'll be kind of fun. But yeah, unfortunately, I won't be able to see a lot of you this year at RSA, but definitely look forward to seeing the outcome of that. And a lot of the outcome of what's going to be happening at RSA is kind of what I'm going to talk about right now. And Bob and I are going to kind of be a little interactive through this. So what I'm going to give you, there's going to be several big announcements that are going to, hit the wire next week about what BlackBerry and Cylance are doing together. And so what you're going to see here kind of is a combination of the two stories kind of coming together. And then I'm going to actually show you, I'm going to give you some live demonstrations today of what some of the technology that the two groups have been working together to build throughout the year of our kind of history of our 1 year acquisition of being part of BlackBerry. So a lot of what BlackBerry has been talking about, and we'll be talking about more, is the concept of zero trust. So what I'd like to do is take you through a few concepts here. Now, we talk about there's many different issues around cybersecurity today, right? If we look at things like expanding attack surfaces, right? We look at tons of different applications that are being developed, lots of different applications coming live today. There's cloud, there's on-premises equipment, there's all of these types of things that are essentially accelerating the speed of innovation that we have out there. And all of that code being created creates the possibility for vulnerabilities in code. And so cybersecurity issues we look at are essentially this exponential group of attackers, attack types, vulnerabilities, all of these things kind of exploding at a pace that is very difficult to keep up with. And then you cross those kind of technical cybersecurity issues with things like offensive investments. Today, there's over 150 nations in the world that invest in offensive cybersecurity weapons. This is not just defending against attacks, but this is actually investing and sponsoring groups that are actually going out and trying to attack for either profit or for nation state interests. Obviously, if you're from the US, this is an election year, so you've got not just regional geopolitical tensions, but you have global geopolitical tensions that are impacting the cyber issues that we have to look at on a daily basis. Now, there's another set of issues that we have to deal with, which is this concept of endpoint chaos, right? There's an explosion of the number of types of endpoints, right? I mean, just a few years ago, we only thought really about our desktops, our laptops. Maybe we talked about mobile devices a little bit as a type of endpoint, but usually those were handled by a different group somewhere over in IT. Now, today, we have to worry about things like our heating and cooling control infrastructure, our lighting infrastructure. These things can actually be used against our organization if they're not protected properly. So these types of endpoints, the complexity of those endpoints are exploding. Then we've got the concept of, okay, well, everybody wants to stick an agent on these machines so that they can manage them, right? IT's got their agents, and then you've got security has their agents, and maybe you've got DevOps has their agents they want to put on and manage these things. So on the endpoints themselves are being consumed by the number of agents, the number of things that are being installed just to have the machine boot and participate in the network is causing these machines to be overrun essentially with load, and then you get users start to complain about things. Then you've got, again, number of vendors, number of alerts, alert fatigue that has been a concept we've talked about for probably better than a decade, of all of the stuff that comes with this explosion of endpoints. Now, there is basically what we're looking at is an explosion of these two concepts, the cyber chaos as well as the endpoint chaos, that are combining against each other. So for every element in the endpoint chaos slide, there's all of those elements on the cyber chaos slide, and vice versa. So we end up with this huge explosion. What does it actually mean for both IT and end users? Well, what it means is that the end users are going to try to simplify what they're doing. If we require complex passwords and we have to change them every 90 days, guess what? They're going to write them down. They're going to make them simple. They're going to defeat the purpose of a complex password by trying to get around and make it easy for themselves to use, right? You've got an explosion of the use of personal devices being used for business use. You've got security workarounds that appear, right? And so our users have to work around these things. They're going to use a personal computer because it doesn't have those 45 agents that your corporate computer gets stuck with because, hey, the machine works well. They don't have to go log in and wait 20 minutes for the thing to get all those agents to get their daily updates or whatever, or to do their weekly scan. They don't have to go have coffee or anything else while it does this kind of thing. If they just use their personal machine, then they can just get their work done and move on. Right? And we've got security issues like, oh, I just clicked on a link from Credit National Bunk, right? Not bank, but bunk. These things happen, right? We have very, very smart people that, well, they accidentally lose devices or they leave them or they get stolen or whatever these concepts are. But there's a lot of issues that happen in a personal crossing with business, crossing with IT, and trying to keep end users happy. So we end up working around a lot of issues that as IT people, we don't want to have those users, standing out in front of our doors with pitchforks and torches wanting to have us for lunch. So we try to make things easy. Now, what happens here is BlackBerry's concept is that we need to have security designed for humans. It's designed for humans that want to just get their work done. So it compensates. It's a compensating control against security workarounds. It's designed for employees to make mistakes and still be okay. They're not going to compromise their entire company by clicking on a specific link, for example. And really, it is time for smarter security. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit more, because the word smarter here is really the key thing. Now, to do this, BlackBerry has essentially entered into a philosophy, and this is not a product, it's not anything else, but it's a philosophy of what do we build, how do we build it, and why do we build it? Well, it's based around a concept of asking yourself 3 simple questions. How can you trust the devices that connect to your network, the apps and the data contained within them, and maybe even how can you trust the people that are actually connecting or using your business data? Right? So it's very simple. A single device can end up compromising if it gets compromised because it was online at a coffee shop or somewhere, or maybe a hotel, or you accidentally left your Wi-Fi on at Black Hat or something like that. It gets compromised. When that device comes back into the quote trusted network, it's very easy for that device to compromise the rest of the systems. On the apps and data side, there are so many apps, especially when you consider mobile devices into this, right? How do we trust that every app on the app stores is actually a trustworthy app? I don't know if many of you have thought about this, but if you think about what we do on our mobile devices, we will be so quick to install an app off the App Store just to try it, see if we like it, and maybe we keep it or maybe we don't. But we're so cavalier in trusting that these app stores have our best interest in mind, our security in mind, by publishing these apps. When in fact, if you look at the thought processes behind getting an app on the App Store, they're really there just to protect the profit margins of the App Store host. They're not really there to keep us as consumers safe. So if we've got these millions and millions of apps that anybody can install on their phone, we've got cloud services that are running crazy. You can pretty much go out and find cloud service, a SaaS service to provide any sort of business function you want today, and maybe even some illegitimate ones like I can actually log into a ransomware as a service site and download some ransomware. All provided for you free and clear, in the cloud, makes it easy. These become issues. If we can't trust the apps, how do we trust the data? How do we trust our corporate data or our organization data that is stored in those apps or accessed through those apps? And then lastly, and Bob's going to talk about this a little bit more as well shortly, how do we trust the people, right? There's a lot of reasons why someone might be good today and bad tomorrow. Maybe they're being extorted at home. I mean, remember the old Harrison Ford movie Firewall, right? These things do happen in the real world. Good people turn bad, or good people, assumingly good people get into our organizations and get trusted at a level that is essentially set up one time, and then they're trusted for the entire time that they're using our devices, apps, and data. They're trusted at that level for the entire time. Is that something that we have to look at differently moving forward? So, as I said before, BlackBerry is really beginning to push this concept of zero trust. Now, many of you are familiar with zero trust, and I have a feeling that next week at RSA, zero trust is probably going to be the next marketing buzzword that you're going to hear. You know, years ago it was cloud, and then it was like workforce transformation, and over the last couple of years, thanks to Cylance, it's been AI and machine learning and all this kind of fun stuff. Zero trust is going to be the next one. And I bet this year at RSA, nearly every booth is going to be talking about zero trust. And they're going to be talking it in their little aspect of maybe they only solve one little problem, or their product suite only does one little thing. And so BlackBerry is uniquely able to talk about zero trust across all of those different types of devices, across all of those different types of apps, as well as the data stored in them, and even the people that are involved in all of this stuff. And it's all from one vendor, and it's all going to be under single console, single agent, all those type of concepts, rather than having to throw 40 different vendors at trying to solve this zero trust philosophy. Now, zero trust has a huge impact on your end users, because if you're not going to trust them to do anything, are you going to make them re-authenticate every 10 minutes? Are you going to make them enter some sort of multi-factor authentication where for some reason the second factor is on the same device that you entered your first factor, entirely defeating the purpose of that? All of these type of concepts are attempting to enter into a philosophy of zero trust. However, the end user impact is so great that we end up with all of these IT workarounds and shadow IT concepts. So BlackBerry, while it has the philosophy of zero trust, it also has a philosophy of something we call zero touch. So zero trust is for IT and security. Zero touch is for the end user. How can we create products that actually allow us to solve the zero trust concept, but make it so much easier for our end users to actually get their work done? Can we actually be more secure and with less user friction than we have done before? So that's where we get involved into this concept of zero touch. Now, the only way that you can actually make these two concepts be good for both audiences, IT security as well as the end user, to utilize, quote, smarter products. And that means you're using AI at the core. So AI, so all the products get built on some sort of AI where the product is doing all of the decision making itself, allowing your end users to work freely in anything that they want to do while still giving IT and security that zero trust concept. So AI, and for those of you familiar with Cylance, probably most of you on the phone right now are, this has been something that Cylance has been doing for the better part of a decade and is really a core reason why BlackBerry decided to purchase Cylance. Not because, or not all because we have a very, very successful endpoint security product and EDR solution, but because we are data scientists at core. We know how to make AI work in security for the end user and for IT, and that's evidenced by, for example, the current Cylance products. Okay, so you guys know Cylance on the desktop, or I'm assuming you do, so I'm not going to show you a demo of how the Cylance AI is uniquely different right now. Robert and I may come back and do that in the near future, but what I'd like to do just very quickly is talk about this date and time. Some of you may remember this specific date and time, and some of you may not, but this is the exact date and time that WannaCry began spreading through machines in Asia in 2017, and within a few hours impacted significant portions of the world. And so we all know the ramifications of this type of an outbreak, right? With WannaCry, 200,000 computers compromised, 150 countries. NHS in the UK and Scotland were one of the bigger, kind of more talked about, impacted organizations with 70,000 devices compromised. Now, this is not just desktop computers. This is things like MRI machines and blood storage refrigerators, as a couple of examples. Automotive manufacturers had to stop production. There was another outbreak of a type of ransomware shortly after this that impacted global shipping for some organizations. And so we take a look at this and we try to understand, well, why did WannaCry and why did NotPetya and these other types of things actually succeed? Well, they succeeded because the defenses at the time operate at the speed of humans. And you guys understand this concept, or we've talked about this concept at Cylance for a very long time. I call it the hamster wheel of death, right? There has to be some victim that dies first. There has to be that sacrificial lamb. Once that sacrificial lamb has been killed, then that version of the ransomware or the virus or whatever is known to the vendors, and the vendors can then reverse engineer it, develop signatures, test those, push them out to their site, and then it's up to the customers to then make sure that that gets deployed out. So there's a lot of human friction required and a lot of time consumed because of that specific element. And that's why WannaCry and followed by NotPetya succeeded. It wasn't because it was the most complex malware created. It wasn't because it even included the NSA exploit, preyed upon lazy patching. That's not really why it succeeded. It succeeded because the attack moved at the speed of computers when our defenses at the time moved at the speed of humans. So again, we have to be smarter, and the way to do that is with AI. Now, this is normally where I would do a demo of how Cylance can protect in the future, essentially, but to save a little time, I just want to show you this one slide. This is some of our research that we did, and we continually do this. We will take a big name malware outbreak kind of thing, and we will take that version and we'll test it against older versions of Cylance's AI brain. For example, there on the bottom of the screen, WannaCry was detected by an AI brain built by Cylance that was over 19 months prior to the existence of WannaCry. So with all other vendors, there is no negatives. They were never ahead of WannaCry. Everybody had, with the exception of Cylance, had to do some sort of update, signature update. Maybe it was an AI ML built signature that did it, but nobody had, except for Cylance, that 0-day protection against WannaCry, and definitely nobody had the time before, where even if you took a machine, installed Cylance on it, shut it down for nearly 2 years, put it in a closet, fired it up the day WannaCry came out, the machine was still protected, even without internet connectivity. So this is a unique advantage, and this is why Cylance has been so successful. And again, this is one of the reasons how we can trust the devices that we're connecting into our network, because if we can keep them free from being compromised, being exploited, then we can actually begin to trust those devices, whether they're personal or corporate, connecting into our network and accessing our apps and data. That's the concept of Cylance Protect and optics running on the desktop, protecting those devices from compromising our network. So let's talk about mobile. To do this, I actually want to shift over, and I'm going to flip into live demo mode now. And so on your screen, you should actually see my Android device. And actually, this is a live device sitting in front of me that I've got plugged in. So this is not a movie or anything else. This is a live device. And for those of you who are familiar with BlackBerry applications, we build world-class business applications for mobile devices. We don't build phones anymore. We build secure, containerized applications that allow IT and security to manage the applications without having to manage your device. So you don't have to put the device under management, but you still get the protection of separately encrypted data, separate over-the-air communication, all the different policies and things that apply that you want to apply to the applications, but it only impacts the business applications. BlackBerry Work is one of the core applications that we build, and this is essentially a better than Outlook type of business class email client that's on your phone. I'm showing it on Android, but it looks very, very similar on iOS. But basically, you can get in here and this is your, traditional email application that you want to use. You can reply, you can set up your calendar, you've got your calendar contacts, document repository, all this kind of stuff built into this application. Also built into this application for the first time ever is essentially Silence Protect. Instead of installing an application on the device that actually has really no business value, and this is what's done by several of the other, quote, AV vendors on mobile devices, they'll be happy to sell you an application and you install it on your device, but to see any value from that application, whether it's malware detection or just OS compliance or anything else, the user actually has to run it from time to time. They can't run it in the background all the time. They can't do that sort of thing like we do on our desktop. What really value does it have? However, if that Silence Protect product code is essentially sitting inside of the email application that I'm going to be using for 8 hours a day, then it's actually running and actually can do things for me and to protect my organization. Let's take an example. I've got an example here. This is actually a sample of malware that was hosted on Google Play. And this, according to Google Play, was installed over 100 million times. And in fact, it actually shipped on several devices out of the box that were manufactured in China. Application has a legitimate business function, which is it will use your camera to scan, to take a picture of a file, convert it into a nice little black and white PDF that you can then email into your expense system or whatever. So it has a good business value. However, it also has essentially what is called dropper code in it, which means it checks in with a service and will download other executables in the background to execute. We've seen things like it signing up for services on your behalf, signing up for subscriptions. Maybe it decides to run an ad clicker thing kind of in the background where it eats your battery up, and it's basically just sitting back there, clicking on ad kind of things. You never actually see it. We've also seen it download programs that will actually exfiltrate data off of the device, unencrypted, unprotected data like your SMS messages or maybe documents that are stored in Google apps that are on the device or even Microsoft apps that are on the device itself because they're not separately encrypted. Now, again, we don't have a Silence Protect application or separate agent running on this device. It's built into these BlackBerry applications. So now if I launch BlackBerry Work, what you're going to see is that we are blocking access to the corporate data because we've detected that there's a threat on this device. And that threat is specifically that application that was installed. It has been detected by Silence's AI engine as being malware. By policy, we can set what we want as far as the reaction. In this case, we set the device as being out of compliant. And if the device is out of compliant, then the user cannot access their email or their corporate web browser or their work documents or whatever. Data is stored on that device, separately encrypted. It's never decrypted because we're not actually allowing access that far into the application. Now, the cool thing is here as well is that as a user, I am actually able to resolve this issue myself. So if I simply exit out of BlackBerry Work and I go into my device here, I can actually click on this application, uninstall it from the device. And this would also, in this example, would also uninstall any of the hidden applications that are stored within it and are executing in the background. And then I click on Work and I'm immediately allowed back into my corporate environment and I can continue to transact email any way I wish to. So that is a way of basically taking the Silence AI engine and extending that into the mobile world with malware detection capabilities on a mobile device. But different from any other vendor that's out there, we're actually able to protect the corporate asset, which is the data, or the organization's asset, which is the data contained within the applications. So this is how we can begin to trust our apps and the data that is contained within them, especially from compromise like malware, or on an iOS device, for example, maybe an app got sideloaded onto the device and is actually malware, or maybe it's just some other type of application that we don't want. Being able to detect that and actually stop the user from gaining unencrypted access to corporate data is how we're going to protect that data. So this is called Cylance Protect Mobile. It's built into the BlackBerry applications. It's also going to be added, and by the way, this is shipping today. This is available. The BlackBerry apps that sit on the App Store today actually have this component built into them, is for the BlackBerry UEM apps. And then shortly here, this will be added into what's called the BlackBerry Dynamics SDK. So if you build your own apps, or if you have third parties that build apps, and you are using the BlackBerry Dynamics SDK, which gives you the separate on-device encryption, gives you the separate over-the-air encryption, gives you all the policy compliance, also now gives you Cylance Protect code in that. So any third-party application that is built with the Dynamics SDK will also have Cylance Protect capabilities in it. So the next thing I want to talk about very quickly is something called BlackBerry Intelligent Security. And again, this is something that might be foreign to some of you, and I do invite you to come by the RSA booth to take a look at this. But again, this is a product suite or category that manages all of these applications, all of the telemetry coming in from all the different devices, your desktops, your usage of the application, and makes intelligent AI-based decisions on how to dynamically adjust your policy based upon the risk that is being exhibited by your device, by your applications, or even by you. So this includes things like contextual authentication. Can we actually not have to make the user re-authenticate if, for example, their mobile device and their desktop are in close proximity to each other, or on a trusted network, or even on a learned network? Can we actually make those friction-based interactions much lighter to our end users? And that's the goal. On the IT side, this is a dynamic adaptive policy. If the user, for example, like I just did with my device, had a malware incident on their mobile device, the system would automatically raise their risk score in the background. Then it might, based upon IT's choices, it might limit interaction for a period of time to specific data until further investigation is done or whatever. But it's always looking at the telemetry coming from all the different applications, the data, the devices themselves, as well as the user interaction and behavior to dynamically adjust policies. There is one new cool thing being added, and this is where I'm going to end because it's going to allow Bob to come in and talk for a few moments about Persona. But what I would like to do is show you what Persona is going to look like on a mobile device. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of BlackBerry Work. And I've got another application here that is built. We call it Persona. And this application is essentially a version of BlackBerry Work. So again, you'll see it looks very familiar to what I was running on the other application. And this is built to demonstrate what we call continuous authentication. And for those of you who were at RSA last year, we showed continuous authentication working on a desktop or laptop, right? Where we track keyboard usage, we track mouse usage, we track the micro vibrations and how you touch your trackpad. All of these things to continually authenticate you as a user. And now this is also being brought to mobile devices and in the applications. So as you can see here in the top left corner, I'm actually signed into this application as a different user, as John Harima, who you actually will get to meet at RSA if you do go. In the upper right-hand corner, you're going to see this shield-looking icon, and that essentially is my trust level of my application right now. So let's say I set down my application or my phone and I walk away from it. And because I'm within my 15-minute timeout or maybe half-hour timeout or whatever, anybody could pick up this device and begin using it and looking through it for information. So as I touch this device, you're going to see some interesting things on the screen because we have this one turned on in kind of a debug mode where we're showing you the evidence we're gathering. You're going to see as I touch the device, you're going to see pressure points. You're going to see all the different data points as I scroll up and down looking for something interesting, and I pop open an email and go, hey, that looks interesting, maybe not quite interesting enough for me to want to copy out or forward. Oh, and then I get asked to re-authenticate. So within just a few seconds, within just a few touches of the device, the AI brain that is built into this persona application has determined that I am not John Harriman. I am not the AI. My current usage of this device does not match him. Even though maybe I could enter the PIN code or the password or whatever, my usage of this application is not John. Therefore, I'm going to step out and ask for further validation that you are who you say you are, or I'm going to simply lock out your session. Like you kind of saw with Persona on the desktop, we can just lock the laptop and require some other level of authentication. So those are a couple of cool things that are coming out that we're going to talk more about at RSA next week, but allowing you with BlackBerry AI across different products, devices, apps, capabilities, we're actually allowing you to get to a point where you can trust devices that connect. We can allow you to trust apps and data contained within them, and even the people that use our devices, whether it's how they touch them, whether it's the behavior of what they're doing from day to day, continually authenticating everything that the user is doing, as well as their physical contact with the devices. So essentially, in summary, that's where BlackBerry is going. BlackBerry is going to build security solutions that is designed for humans. It's designed for workaround issues. It's designed for mistakes. And it's smarter because it's being built at the speed of computers using AI, not at the speed of humans. To hand it over to Bob.
Some of the products that you see, like with the Cylance Persona for mobile, that's one of the big things we will be announcing next week. That will be available GA in the early March timeframe. So it is a very real product. It's here. When we talk about the continuous authentication aspects of it, if you think about how we work, I may come into work and let's say I'm using a push notification for multi-factor authentication. Let's say like a Duo, for example, or RSA, or you could fill in the name, right? I come in, I do my MFA, I put my device down and I walk away, whether it's my laptop I walk away from or my phone. If Brian was to walk over, pick up my phone, he could start typing it in there. I've already done my multi-factor authentication. On my laptop, I've had my MacBook running where it doesn't time out. Maybe I have a live app that's running in there. I walk away, I go get a cup of coffee, bite to eat in the break room. What prevents anybody from walking in? And that's one of the potential challenges that we have when we talk about, multi-factor authentication is great. I did a one time. And then whatever policy my organization sets, whether that's 6 hours or 8 hours or 4, whatever it may be, during that time, I've established trust. I'm a trusted user. We've done the device check. It's a trusted device. And now I'm working. But how do you know it's still me? The continuous authentication is an incredibly powerful tool that enables us to go take a look at the device, look at your actions like Brian demoed, right? How am I holding it? How am I using it? What apps am I using? So you've got the analytics and the behavioral analytics aspects of it, and you've got the biometrics of the device. The other things in the mobile gets very powerful is as we start talking about where am I working from? I often work from home. So right now I'm sitting in my home office on this webcast. So as I'm working and doing stuff, the level of security is a lot safer here versus if I'm sitting in a Starbucks or in a coffee shop somewhere. or if I'm in a lobby. So being able to understand where I am, taking some of the contextual data there, then allows me to be more concise with the security controls. The continuous authentication is great. Like Brian said, I walk up, I pick up his phone because he walked away. I start dabbling around. Well, it suddenly realizes I'm not using it the same way. I'm going to apps that Brian doesn't go to or doesn't go to that often. I'm doing stuff, my behavior patterns just isn't normal. This is the only product in the industry that takes directly from the device to generate that risk score. So with that being said, that is absolutely going to be a significant announcement for coming out of next week. Brian, one of the things that I've heard you present on, I thought was incredibly powerful. When we look at Cylance Persona, we're coming out with mobile in March. In the next few months, we'll be coming out with it on the laptops. We haven't even hit a year. The end of February is the 1 year acquisition date, or post-acquisition was the end of February. So we're just about at that 1 year mark. We've already announced you've got Cylance Protect that's out there available today. We're announcing now the Cylance Persona for mobile. We're showing that integration story. And I mean, we know there are cyber companies out there that 5 years after an acquisition, 10 years after acquisitions, they still haven't integrated. They still work in silos. So we've done this. The other side is, as we look at these products and these integrations, one of the questions I get asked the most as I travel, Brian, I know as you travel, you get asked the same question, is why would BlackBerry buy Cylance? And if you look at where Cylance locked down the endpoints, prevented attacks on the endpoints, BlackBerry is now carrying that over into the mobile space. And then now as we get into the Internet of Things. So Brian, I know you talked a lot about, in previous webcasts I've been on with you, you've talked about our CES show.
Yes, yeah.
The Persona and Range Rover. You want to talk a little bit about that? Because I think it's a power of this new frontier, that new attack surfaces that we're seeing in the chaos slide. We're starting to see this in our integrations and us protecting things in the automobile space, in the Internet of Things, et cetera. So why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So last month, as Bob said, we were at Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. And, why in the heck would BlackBerry be in a consumer electronics show? Well, guess what? We weren't in the normal sections where you would look at, buying mobile phones and other cool tech like that. We were actually in the automotive hall. So we were sandwiched between Honda and Audi and Bell Helicopter, doing these cool rooftop drone kind of things. It was really cool because what we actually demonstrated, and I actually did some of the demonstrations myself and talked with several people about it, but we showed how we essentially took Cylance technology, which again, we've only been a year into this acquisition. Most companies within a year maybe don't even have, business functions and HR integrated yet, let alone any sort of tech. Well, the cool thing is the tech guys were actually doing work somewhat a little bit even before the business side. And so we actually have these three different Cylance technologies running inside of a Land Rover, Range Rover Discovery vehicle sitting there on the show floor. And the cool thing is we built in this kind of scenario where we're actually operating this vehicle with these different elements that are running. And I know this is a horribly complex slide, but if you look at it into three different kind of areas, on the right-hand side, you want to ensure the integrity of applications that are getting installed in these vehicles. As an example, this vehicle is running Android OS as far as the visualization layer on both the instrument panel on the dashboard, all of the vehicle sensors, and then all the infotainment. All of that is running essentially Android, and it actually sits on top of BlackBerry QNX. Many of you don't know this, but there's over 150 million cars on the road today that are operating off of BlackBerry QNX operating system. It is your standard, average, everyday brands that many of you would recognize, and probably many of you actually have. So the next time you look at that infotainment system, or you look at your digital dash, your instrument cluster or whatever, just realize there's probably a really darn good chance that it's running on BlackBerry software. Yeah, it's not a mobile phone with a keyboard, but it is still BlackBerry software. So what we actually showed, I showed you today running on a Samsung S10 device, Silence Protect, but we actually look at how could malware actually get into a vehicle? Could we actually send those APKs over the air as an over-the-air update to the door sensors or the speed sensors, the computers that run those? Could we actually inject malware through the service port when you go in to get your oil change and they need to do an upgrade of something on your vehicle? Could we inject malware through that? And we actually had the display in the vehicle, and we would actually take some Iranian APT Android malware, and we'd throw it in through the service port on the vehicle, and you'd see this cool little pop-up message as the app tried to install. It would say Silence Protect detected a threat, prevented this application from running. So that was a really cool thing to see. However, what is even more entertaining, I think, is the concept around what optics can do in the vehicle combined with persona. Just like Bob and I have been talking about how persona can identify you as a person based upon how you touch the keyboard, the trackpad, the mouse, the angle you hold the device, when you're walking or not, all of that information, we actually can do that inside the vehicle itself. As you steer the vehicle, as you touch the pedals, even your weight on the seat, all of these things get combined together to create this model of who you are. Now, if anybody is familiar with Ford's MyKey concept, so the MyKey allows you to take a key fob and to essentially set permissions and restrictions on it. So let's say, and this is a real situation, I've got a 16-year-old daughter who is now learning how to drive. In my big F-350 pickup, I can take my key fob and assign one to her. And when that key fob is in the ignition, it restricts her speed to 65 miles an hour. It restricts the power. It restricts the usage of four-wheel drive or the volume on the stereo. All of these things can be restricted. However, what happens if she gets into the vehicle with MyKey, which does not have those restrictions, right? So can you actually say, oh, this key is in the vehicle, but I identify the driver as somebody who is different, and then apply, using optics, for example, apply the actual proper policy for that driver. And this is exactly what we showed, the insertion of a specific user's key, and then we could actually replay a few seconds of driving data obtained for a different user. So, or maybe it's a valet, or maybe somebody just stole my car. Then there's all kinds of things that you can do once you've identified that the person driving doesn't match the key. What do you do about that? Can you send alerts? Can you restrict the speed? Can you say, oh, you're only allowed 25 miles an hour for a 2-mile radius? All of these different things could actually become a reality and are really kind of valuable, but it's really cool to see, keeping the device itself, the 100 and some CPUs that are inside this brand new Land Rover, keeping it safe from external attacks like malware and exploitations and things like that using traditional Silence Protect. And then even protecting the use of the vehicle, showing things with persona and optics. So it was a lot of fun. It was really cool demonstrations, and it's fun to see people kind of light up when they say, wow, this is not the old BlackBerry that we remember. This is something new, and it really is this concept of intelligent security everywhere, not just security everywhere, but making it actually intelligent.
When I heard, and when I was coming in here about a year ago to come work, I was actually the very first hired BlackBerry Cylance employee post-acquisition. And when I heard the 150 million vehicles that were in, absolutely blows your mind. And that was what I was like, wow. And automatically I thought of autonomous driving cars, locking it down, securing it. The other threat vector I never even thought about was, I travel a lot. Brian, you travel a lot. As I get into a rental car, plug in my phone and it says, hey, do you want to put CarPlay on? Yes. What apps do I have on my phone? Right. And if you think about it, right, we just came out with we have a mobile threat report that's out there. It's been highly read. It's basically talking about the threats and what we're seeing in the mobile space. And we see a couple of weeks ago, Jeff Bezos makes the news because his phone, a nation state, hacked into his phone, his personal cell phone. So we know that the threat vectors are there. So if I'm going to go after one of you on this call, Brian, say, I'm not going to come after Brian Robeson at work. I know that we've got tight security. It's probably not going to happen. But when he gets in the car and he's going to CarPlay, his mobile device, or when he's at home, what does that threat look like? So again, these are all things that we kind of look at. And if you look at kind of that new frontier of where we're headed, what we're going to be announcing, the announcements around Zero Trust, we have some significant announcements around there. We've got the Cylance Protect for mobile, which is out. We've got the Cylance Persona, which will be general availability will be early March timeframe. These are significant integrations, getting the product out there, showing the reason of why a BlackBerry would purchase a Cylance. So with that being said, again, please stop in. I will be out there. I will spend majority of my time at the Samovar Tea Lounge. We're in the North Hall. The booth is 5655. Please stop in. We have demos of all of this, of all of our offerings. Again, we're going to have on between 10:30, starting 10:30 in the morning each day. We're going to be running theater presentations. We also have a threat researcher in the booth that you can come speak to. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this was a good use of your time. Brian, always great to hear you. I appreciate you jumping on and doing this for us. For the rest of you, anyone at RSA, I look forward to seeing you out there. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great day.